Welcome back to Love and Relationships for the Modern Mystical Life. And today it's very exciting because I have Gabriel McCay here as my very first guest on the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Juliana.
I invited Gabriel on because Gabriel and I met quite synchronistically a couple of times, first at that non-office Christmas party at Molly's, and then at the gym that we go to here in Gibson's. And then you became my mentor in this business program. And as we got to know each other through that nine-ish weeks, what I noticed was this real resonance between our perspectives on the world, our dreams for the world, what's possible. And what I've always really loved about you, Gabriel, is you have this vision of hope. And I deeply appreciate that because I hold that in me as well. And you have introduced me to joy in a way that I've never experienced it before. So Gabriel he owns Blue Lotus Creative out of Gibson's. You run an amazing workshop called Common Joy, where you are literally making joy more accessible and common to people. And you run, which I've never been to, Pancakes and Jam, which is a community gathering as well on Sunday mornings, if I remember that correctly. And you founded the West Coast Hug Emporium. Gabriel also works with men in his men's group Forged, and you're now doing men's one-on-one coaching, which is amazing. What I've noticed of you in the community is your ability to really welcome people from a real curious place and compassionate place and honest place. And those are the three of my biggest values that I bring into my work and in my own life. And you just do that so naturally. And I've witnessed you in the community just bringing this real safety and also freedom for people to be themselves. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Juliana. Yeah, it's grateful to be here. Grateful to also have connected with you. I also felt so much synchronicity. The last 6 weeks have felt like an exceptional amount of that, and so much support from the universe that I feel like I've taken a hint, to finally just take this leap, this larger leap of this goal I've had in my mind and used as my guiding force and my guiding light to decide how I move forward with things. But rather than playing it small, allowing myself to step fully into that and, just really fully expressing. You mentioned Common Joy and Blue Lotus Creative, and Blue Lotus Creative, was started out of this place of trying to help mission-driven businesses that are trying to change the world for the better and support them on their mission. I felt I had the skills to be able to support them, and I had so many ideas myself, and I wanted to be able to give other people that sense of ownership, that empowerment to know that they can take those ideas out there. West Coast Hug Emporium was actually one of my first sort of how am I going to make the world a better place, and how am I going to do more than my business, and just be another business. And so I came back from a music festival where people were hugging a lot. And I really felt that made a really powerful impact on the culture of the festival, how close people were. And I noticed that. And, while sitting with a group of people discussing, this experience of the festival in my second year, I felt this connection with okay, well, how do I take it back to my own community? I want to live like this all the time. Why can't we move into this, as a normal thing? And so I decided to come back and take this idea of a hug deli that a friend had and kind of make it my own, add my own sort of marketing style to it. I created a logo. I created t-shirts. We created a hug menu, a menu of hugs, appetizers, entrees, and desserts. But the goal of using that sort of format to educate people about the power of hugs, the science behind hugs. And so that iteration kind of stayed as a backbone to my life. It's been about 15 years of doing this. And it started with giving out free hugs and has, graduated to so much more and creating a whole new set of art form through sidewalk chalk art, mandala hug zones. I've done a bunch of them in Lower Gibsons and started originally on Commercial Drive. But we've done many different art installations, just trying to connect people and give people the opportunity to connect authentically, and so that has evolved and continued. Common Joy is one of the latest iterations that was birthed out of Pancakes and Jams, which is more like a kid-friendly, very kid-focused jam space, community gathering space that's by donation. Anyone can come every second Sunday through the fall and winter months here on the Sunshine Coast when people seem to hibernate. And we need connection more than ever during that time, because we are not meant to be lone creatures. We need each other. And we live in a world of fake connection, where you get these dopamine hits, but you don't actually get the, connection, with these actual people. You can talk with them, you can text with them, but it still doesn't have that tangible presence, of being in another person's presence, being able to look in someone's eyes and feel their energy. And so having these gathering points became something that came real just this last year. I did it for one full season and started doing these opening ceremonies based off some of the joy work I'd done in different joy boot camps. And then next thing you know, Common Joy became the next logical step. Why can't I do a longer iteration of this where I can really help people tune into their intrinsic joy inside, the joy that's inside, rather than searching for joy through experiences or through going out to clubs or this or that. You can actually just build a joyful life. And how do you do that? And so giving people the space to be able to slow down enough, give themselves some intentional time to be able to do that. And now, the men's work has been a constant, iteration of that. And the coaching thing is a new thing, but it's once again that feeling of stepping fully into my purpose in the last 6-7 weeks that have allowed me to really just take that leap and know that I can help. And the affirmations and the reflections that I'm getting from people as I go forth and step into this makes me feel just reinforced in that belief even more so. So I just feel so much support. I like to say pronoia is the feeling that I'm feeling currently, which is this unreasonable belief that everyone's actually supporting me, and regardless of good or bad, it's all meant to guide me on the path that I need to take to be able to bring this to light and step fully into my heart's and soul purpose.
Yeah, Rob Bresney, Pronoia. I used to have that book. There's a few different places that I want to go, so I'm going to maintain my excitement. So the first is joy, because this is something that I've shared this with you. Joy is something that I notice is difficult for me to maintain or allow it to be something that I express. And I've noticed this throughout my life. And part of the work that I do is teaching people about the capacity to feel, teaching people about your emotion. You're never going to die from an emotion. And we talk a lot about how, or I talk a lot about how you have this threshold of how much you can feel, like sadness, anger, grief, and then how much you can feel joy, happiness, peace. And we're born into that in our family systems where you come with this thermostat. And then we have these mechanisms that we all do that then when we go beyond those two thresholds, we do something that pushes us back down into this one that feels familiar. And what I've noticed in Common Joy is that I have really worked at these lower threshold emotions, being able to hold them and being okay with them. And slowly these upper thresholds of emotions are being stretched as well. But I notice this in Common Joy, how I can feel my nervous system doing this oh yeah, we're building this capacity to play as adults, to have fun, to allow this to be something normal as opposed to life being so serious all the time, because life is really serious and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that is very serious. And I'm curious about how your relationship to joy and how you cultivated this.
A lot of hard work. Yeah. it's interesting. I've always tried to look for the bright side, you know, and I think I did it almost too much when I was younger, as I was always looking for the bright side. And maybe I wasn't giving credibility or credence to the negative emotions, or, just like, it's fine, it's temporary, and just focus on the bright, but one of my things that I always tried to focus on is the words that I spoke. I would try and be positive with those words. I wasn't going to say anything if it wasn't positive. And I feel like I may have done myself a small disservice in that, but I also may have trained, like, according to neuroscience, the more you think a specific way of thinking, the easier it is for those neural pathways to fire. So I think I've forced myself to think positive for long enough of a time that it is like my default neural pathway, so that my neural pathway just automatically defaults to joy. I got a reflection about 7 years ago in one of my first men's groups, sitting there with about a year, and the facilitator called me out and said, "I think you're fake." And my ego was like, oh God, what do you mean? No. But I managed to eke out the word "why?" And he told me that, it's because he only heard positive from me. And that made me realize that there could be safe spaces, to be able to share the negative, or not the negative, but the darker, less joyful emotions, the less positive emotions. Because what that did is it allowed people to see the range as well. And by just showing the positive, people just assumed that I was positive or that I was pretending. And maybe there was a little bit of pretending. I think fake it till you make it is a totally applicable thing here. Your brain can't tell the difference, but by doing it over and over again, it becomes true. I don't know if you remember in Calm and Joy when we sat there and we did the laughter, repeat after me, ha, ha, ha. You continue to do that. And the 5, 6, 7 first times, by the time you're saying ha, 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 eventually your brain starts to actually laugh. And it's just, you've tricked it into thinking that you're laughing. But by doing that, you have just activated all those amazing chemicals in your body to help you tune into that. So you can almost hack yourself a little bit by tuning your physiological state to be able to be in a state to be able to be more receptive to that joy. Because at the end of the day, like you said, we are all born with that joy. We're all born with that joy. We come into this world joyful, kids by default. And it's because they're exploring, they're feeling, they're learning. They get all this amazing reflections. But at the end of the day, you can tap into that as well. And I think we give ourselves less and less permission as we get older, especially as, I'd say as a man, you might think that you got to be stoic and you got to be, this. Don't be tapping in too much into your play, and instead be stoic and muscle and strong, and I have everything under control. I don't need any of this. And so it really it took intentional effort, but by doing that intentional effort, it eventually kind of created that space where it didn't take effort and it came naturally. And then realizing that okay, there's still that, like you said, the emotional range. My emotional range was up here. And then, but I would still have crashes. I would have emotional moments where I'd be crying. I'd be, it wouldn't last long, but it would go down there and then it would be back up here, 98% of the time, but crash. And so, therapy and men's groups and just sharing more and more, realizing that just because I crashed down there doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. And that's a normal part of the human experience, and then developing more emotional resiliency allowed me to find a spot that was a little bit more, it's still higher up, but when I crash, it's like a little blip, it's just a lot less of an impact, because I've built that baseline that's so much higher. So when you mentioned that you started at the lower baseline and had to develop more capacity for joy, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense why we connected so well there.
The opposite range.
Yeah.
There's some, and I really feel it in the nervous system. I feel it in my body and how it is and I notice this with my clients when I'm it's okay to have these sadder, more hard emotions, because I find that people push away the ups and the downs, the extremes on either side, because there's a lot of fear around them. There's a lot of fear of feeling so joyful with people, that feels scary. I can feel the remnants of it. It's getting much, much easier and I'm enjoying it more now. But there's fear around being joyful. There's fear around like experiencing the depths of grief, right? Because it's like, what do I do in this place? Because your system, your whole body is trying to calibrate it to like, how do I hold this? And there's this term in therapy called the window of resilience, it's called the window of tolerance, but I like calling it the window of resiliency, because the more that we expand our capacity to feel on both ends, we become more resilient in the world and in our connections with other people. So that when there is something that happens, you can bounce back from it more easily. You can find this way of connection. And if we pop out to either side, it's like we have to like pull away because it gets to be too much.
That feels so alive for me. And like, the feeling of, looking for the gift, or seeing the gift, it plays into my joy in a large way, especially in the last couple of years. I had this amazing coach, transformational coach, lives on the Sunshine Coast, Dave Robins, and he always told me about the power of the gift and looking for the gift. And, for 3 years that sat there as like, cool, that's cool words, that's awesome, but it didn't hit, and then going through a relationship ending, but a really positive relationship. I was able to see that like, whoa, this is a gift. I saw it right away, and I also sat back with what Dave said. And it's like, well, know to look for the gifts, know that you won't see all of them, but trust that more will probably reveal themselves. And so I sat with that. I'm like, oh, this is a gift. And I know I can see some of the gift from this already. I can see some immediately. I know there's so much more to come. And little did I know, but like the truth in that was like absolute, because how I've been able to step up into what I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up has been completely unlocked by removing myself from that relationship. And I have so much love for this woman and for, her life and the partner that she's with and her kids and my son who's best friends with them. And it's so powerful, but that love is no longer romantic. It's just, I love who she is, and that capacity for love has gone beyond just romantic love. And really in my heart, I've started to really love everyone that comes around, and I go around and connect with them because I know that each of us has gold inside us, and all I need to do is ask curious questions to be able to like start to reveal that gold. Because if I ask the social default questions like, hey, how's it going? Well, people are going to go into default answers. Good. How are you? Whereas if I ask like, what's feeling alive for you today? What's something you've done recently that's brought you some joy? Like, how are you, coping with this state of the world currently? All of a sudden you're opening up the opportunity for like some deeper questions. And that feels more authentic, more human. And I feel connected to that. Even if they're telling me about something sad, I feel connected to them, and that brings me joy.
And that speaks so much. It's like it speaks to the ripple that we have in the world around when we can show up as ourselves in, like I say, curiosity, compassion, and honest communication. And that's with self. So you have to be curious and compassionate and honest with yourself. And then with other, it really starts to create, like, I almost feel it when I have just even an interaction. That man held the door open for me yesterday at the liquor store. And I could see he, like, this older man, he opened the door for me, and I intentionally like looked at him and said, thank you, like from my heart. Thank you for holding the door open. And I could feel how he received my thank you, right? It's like I'm connecting person to person. And we dismiss the power of those even small interactions, like they don't mean anything. But as you were saying, right, we're so disconnected. We're on our phones. We're going through these dopamine hits. It's almost as if we've been numbed out to that depth of connection that's actually available to us all the time.
That hits 100%. And I was literally reading an article about that for my son, because he does watch screens, and we've been having conversations about the unnatural dopamine hits that gives him. And then we're also talking about, okay, well, what's the alternative? What are natural ways that you can get dopamine? And, by using that instead of like talking the negative, don't use screens, It's like, that doesn't work with anyone. Don't do this. You give them an alternative solution. Like, oh, you want that? Well, how about this? Like if he can understand what he's getting from it, and that it actually is just dumping his system with a huge amount of dopamine, but actually is not going anywhere. That dopamine is just sitting there. Whereas, if you actually go and like engage outside or play, you're actually getting this thing, and it's natural dopamine. It's done in a natural way that our bodies are used to. Our bodies are used to this after thousands and thousands of years of, genetic growth and evolution. We're wired that way. But all of a sudden in the last 100 years, we have so many different sources of information and screens and noises, and our body's trying to process all this information. And it's just overwhelming for our systems. Mm-hmm. And so taking that time to move away from devices is so important. That's common joy. It's one of the main requirements, no phones, because we want to be present. We're giving ourselves that time to be present, and it's intentional. Because if you have your phone, you're going to pick it up at some point. You're going to have that autopilot response, even if you're not intentional about it. And someone else is going to have that same autopilot response. And then all of a sudden the connection is broken. Now we're looking at boxes, devices, instead of connecting with their fellow humans. The ripple effect. I want to touch on that, because that has been such a huge piece of my life. Like I said, at 19, I don't know if I said this earlier, but at 19, I decided that my goal in life was to positively affect as many people as I can during my time on this planet. I crafted the wording of that very intentionally, because it's open-ended, right? It means that I could be done right now. If I died, I'm done. It's all good. I've done my goal. But also the motivation for doing more is just so massive, I could affect more people. I could positively affect more people. And that's been a big part of my life, is how do I create those ripples? And recognizing that small ripples sometimes are the bigger ripples, you make a small thing like saying hi to someone or complimenting someone's hat, authentically. That may make them smile, which may lead to them being a little bit happier at work, which may lead to something else, which may lead to something else, which may lead to someone else being happy, to a whole bunch of people being happy, or it contributes to a good week. It starts off the small little rolling ball towards an amazing week, just that small little thing. And how much effort did it take for me to do that? Just a tiny bit of intention rather than slipping into social autopilot. And, when I led the Shambassador team at Shambhala, this is the festival that I went to that had a beautiful culture. After that second year, I came back into this role of a Shambassador, which is basically a culture / info booth roaming person that's there to help new people understand, represent a model citizen of the culture. We're friendly with everyone. We're helping people carry their stuff down the road. We're making sure they have water. We're misting people if they're too hot. We're, helping people who are lost or having troubles or, intoxicated or anything. We're there to support. But we're not just doing that to just do that. We're doing that to inspire other people to do that. So I led a team. At first it was just me on the team, but a couple of years I managed to be the leader of the team. And then I saw that as how many potential ripples could I do by training these people to be amazing joy spreaders. What that can do is it can create ripples. Every single person now has the tools to be able to spread joy. And they don't have to just contain it to the container of the festival. In fact, I encourage them, take it back to your own life. Be it in your regular community, bring that energy and create those ripples. And so we would create so much joy at the festival, but realizing, after 12 years of leading these Shambassadors, I helped empower so many more people to be able to step authentically into their joy and be able to spread that joy in their own communities and become joy makers, culture ambassadors. And the culture that's what we need. We need less people to be, like you said, in the middle and be able to express the shameless joy or express the depths, and that's kind of what Shambassadors would do. They would meet you at the highs, but they'd also meet you at the lows. If you were struggling and you needed some help, they'd come down to your level. Hey, how's it going? We're here for you. How can we help? Yeah, let's go, guys, party. Let's do it. Choo-choo train. Come on, woo-hoo, choo-choo. Bring that energy,
I saw you do that at the gym the other day on Monday, because I'm often there earlier than you, and it was you and another guy were carrying one of the boxes back, and then and you were lifting it together, which was delightful to begin with, because you both easily could have carried one of those on your own. And then you grabbed his hand and like started skipping through the gym. It just made me smile so big, because people are so scared to do that sort of thing. There's this, and it always makes me really curious, like, what is it that terrifies us so much from being so expressive in both ranges, but specifically joy right now? Like, because it is such a beautiful thing. Like, and why don't we, like what you're describing from Shambhala, like, what has stopped us from bringing that into, like, why isn't culture more like that? Why are we so, it feels like we're so suppressed in our expression of self?
I have guesses. I don't know if they're the right answers, but I think one of them is built into our DNA. You know, social ostracization. You know, in the past, when you were in a tribe, would probably mean death, right? If you got too wild or too crazy or whatever, like, okay, we got to kick you out, you know, like you got to go. And that's like, how are you supposed to survive by yourself? And so there's probably like a survival mechanism at play there. I think that's a core piece. But then now we have this layer of like social media, and social media is like, everyone has a phone now, and everyone was of the mindset of like, it's entertainment. You see people doing something, you pull it up for entertainment. And so all of a sudden people are like, well, I don't want to be a star. I don't want to be famous, or I don't want that. I'm just trying to have fun. But the barrier and the social risks to having fun is now you have the potential of being caught at having fun and mocked for having fun, which it's always existed, but it's on like a whole other level. Instead of having to take a social risk in your community, you're taking a social risk that could go across the entire world. And I think that really like hinders people, right? And I think social risk taking is like one of the bravest acts you can take, because otherwise we're going to have a culture of sameness. And a culture of sameness is not a beautiful tapestry to look at. It's like, yay, a like yellow carpet, or, you know, like, it's like, it's just all yellow. I mean, that's beautiful, you know, or like all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, look, there's a beautiful like rainbow thread through there. What's that? Well, there's actually a couple of them. And that's what we are. We get to be those like bastions of culture creation. As individuals, we can weave our threads. And by weaving that individual thread, you actually lower the barrier to entry to everyone else. Because if you can be that wild, crazy person, it's going to make that barrier to entry to the next person joining in. If you're looking like you're having some fun, why wouldn't, you know, someone can step up a little bit easier. It still takes that brave person to be that first follower, you know, that first person to be like, okay, this person could be crazy, you know, which they probably are. Self-professed crazy person over here. But by doing it, you're empowering the next person even more so. That second person makes it even easier for the next person to join, which makes it easier for the next person. And then all of a sudden you can have a proper movement. But you have to take the risk towards moving towards a culture where that exists. And how do you do that? By action, aside from living it. You know, like I've really been inspired by Mahatma Gandhi. You know, it's like people always say, be the change, be the change. But that's what you really need to do. You need to be the change, and it won't happen as an individual. Let's say if you decide to be the change and the change that you want is not conducive with what other people are thinking of, you're not going to be the change. People are going to be like, I don't agree with that. You know, you decide you're going to play, you know, raging heavy metal music at 3:00 in the morning every day. That's the change I want to see in the world, man. Like, I think you're going to piss some people off. It's going to probably be negative. You're going to have to pendulum the other way. So you got to be like respectful in all of your actions, but you can be brave. You just have to temper it with respect. Is this respectful?
I love that. I love that. And that's such a huge part in relationships. I was speaking with a friend about this the other day, and how, even in the, like, when one person is struggling, like if I was struggling and you were supporting me, can I also notice how my struggle could be having impact on you? And, that's such a, like, her and I were talking, we're both therapists, and we're both talking about how, like, it's a bit of a glitch for the brain, because we are, to some degree, immature in how we show up with one another, in that, and it's this unconscious part of us that is wounded from childhood, that we have to protect ourselves and we have to show up in a certain way in our masks. And then when we lose control of the masks and the big emotions come flooding out, that we kind of revert to being like a child. And I'm just kind of putting this together now because I was thinking as you were talking about joy, it's like often people will describe something like that as childish. But I'm curious now, is it's because we're judging it as childish because we have these unwounded child parts inside of us that are really looking for attention and support, and we don't know how to take care of ourselves and then and take care of those wounded parts, bring them to the conscious and be in relationship from that place. So there's this, I don't know, I'm on one of my tracks on my threads of where I go sometimes, but it's like this really interesting, cause that is a big thing that I can hear when I'm like wanting to be joyful. It's like, oh, it's childish. You shouldn't be like, you have to be serious. And I think that is a covering up of these really beautiful aspects of ourselves, because we all have our inner children inside of us that bring out joy and play. And in internal family systems, you look at how all emotions are linked to a child part. And so if you're experiencing joy, that child part has all of its needs met. But if you're experiencing sadness, then that child part needs something. And so how can we give ourselves and each other what we are all needing in the moment? And it just links back to the community piece and how, and respect, and how we don't, like, I would love, this is my mission, I would love people to learn the skills that I learned as a counselor, because I think they're fundamental, like they're just humanity skills. They're skills that we should all have. And I tell my clients all the time, I want to be out of a job. Like, I don't want this job anymore. I want counseling and coaching to be something we no longer need, because everyone knows how to hold themselves, hold another, and have respect for one another in these complex relationships that we have, because they are very messy. And I don't think they're ever not going to be messy, at least in our lifetime. Maybe in your son's lifetime, he'll see something. He'll see something different. But when we can do that and dance in this world of, can I respect myself? Can I respect other people? Can I also be free to be myself and be really curious about who the other person is in front of us? I think that's just, it's a revolutionary way of thinking, and not just thinking, but embodying. When you can embody that, which is what I'm hearing you talking about, like actually living it, as opposed to creating judgments and assumptions about people who you don't necessarily know,
including yourself. And I think
totally.
that's the biggest weapon, right? And like you're touching on, you want you to not be have a job because people are like aware of this. And I think that's what we can actually do, is the work on ourselves. And I think if we want to change the world, I used to think that I would, have to change the world, go out there and change the world, not myself. I have to change the world. And to do that, I was always like, okay, well, I'm going to be an activist, and got really into activism and environmental activism and this and that. And then I'm going to start my business. That's going to help change the world, and then it was only at like 24, 25 when I realized that, like, okay, like the little bit of personal development, that work that I've done has shown me that, like, this is not going to help until I'm able to, like, get myself in this state. So I personally think personal development is how we change the world. Like, doing the work on ourselves allows us to ripple out our presence and our energy, to ripple out to the loved ones around us, which then ripples out to more people. It ripples out to your community, and you can actually change your community by changing yourself. And people resonate. They notice that, they feel that energy, and they want to, they get curious. At least this is what I've experienced, is we get curious, like, where is this energy coming from? And it is from a place of self-love. And I think that's the best thing you can do is love yourself, and not just love yourself in your present moment, because a lot of us may feel like we're not worthy of being loved in our present moment. We're like, oh, I've done this, or I've done this, or I've done this, or I haven't, taken advantage of this, or I haven't done this. We have all these judgments on ourselves on how we haven't achieved our life the way we wanted it to achieve. Most people, I would say. But I think what you can do is you can look inside, don't look at yourself, but look at the inner child inside yourself and love that child. Like, you can actually say it. Like, hey, young Gabriel, I love you. Like, you're amazing just the way you are. Doesn't matter. You've got it. It's going to be okay. And I've got you no matter what. You're my priority. Some of us had amazing parents that actually told us this, and some of us didn't, and I think the one thing that we sometimes forget is we can act as parents to ourselves. And I think that's one of the best things you can do, because again, loving yourself allows you to be solid in your sense of self and be able to emanate that out into the world. That self-love will be evident to other people, and they will want to connect to that love as well. And once you love yourself, it's so much easier to love everyone else, because you have that same compassion for them that you have for yourself. You can see that maybe their inner child just needs a little bit of love. And when they make a bid for attention, you can respond rather than stepping into social autopilot. You can be intentional. You can ask the curious questions that brings them to life. And that's how you can give to the world, again, by working on yourself. And then those ripples will just happen naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Which I have seen myself and in clients and friends, and there is this like belief that I am not enough. Like, what I do is not enough. How could I be the change, as Gandhi said, right? Like, that's like it's this insidious thought form I find in our world, where it's like, well, no, it doesn't actually matter what I do. And I've seen the shift in my entire family system as I chose to show up differently over the last 14 years. It's changed I have a mother-daughter, 3-4 generation history of contempt between mothers and daughters. And my mom and I changed that together. And it was messy and ugly sometimes, but it was always this like, no, we're going to show up and do something different. And then my mom ended up having that shift before her mom, my Nana, passed away. They had some healing. And then I've changed this with my dad and my brothers. And I always have my nephew in the back of my mind. It's like, this is why I'm doing it. It's for him. And I think the part that we have to reconcile ourselves with is that we're not always going to get the accolades for doing it. Like, and that's okay, because people aren't going to know that one thing that, like, you can't track that. It's not something that's really trackable. And often we're seeking the validation of like, oh, what I did was enough. What I did was enough. But can we find that inside of ourselves, knowing like, oh, that actually made a difference. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the things that we do that make a difference don't necessarily look that way to other people. Like in my family, I know sometimes, because my parents have talked about this at length, that how I showed up differently in my family system and like quite demanding of what I wanted to change and didn't always do it in the most graceful way was very uncomfortable and painful for them. But I know from this vantage point that it was exactly what was needed. And I only had what I had in the moment to do it in the way that I did it.
Mm-hmm. I feel a lot of connection with that. I think I held my dad to, an account. As I started doing men's work, I started to like notice patterns in him that, I had noticed before, but it was just like who cares? Let him be who he wants to be, and I started to like hold him accountable to things and call attention to him, not in a way of like, you suck, but like, hey, let me talk with you. Let me understand where this is coming from. Let me give you my experience and share what I'm feeling when this happens. I share like this, and rather than responding and saying, reflecting on what I just said, you've gone into something else completely, and it's about you. And all I can do is just share my experience there. And the beautiful thing is that in the last year and a half, I started to sit and have a weekly call with my folks, my dad and my stepmother and my aunt and my cousin. And this weekly call created the space for healing between my dad and my aunt, brother and sister, and they still can get on each other's nerves, but I feel like they've started to like get to the point where they understand each other. And also my dad stepped into men's work, at 78 years old, and is now 9 months into a men's group. And I've seen massive shifts. And just like I've seen shifts in any man that stepped into that work, where they're able to be vulnerable, share themselves and be heard, which is, what I think most of us need. We want to be able to be ourselves and be seen as ourselves, because then we can step into true growth rather than growing the mask, because if someone's giving you reflections, like when I wore my business professional mask as a young man, people were like, oh, you're so young, you're so like successful and this and that. And I took that as like, yeah, but it's like them giving compliments to the mask. You know what I mean? And so when I step more into myself, then all of a sudden I'm expressing myself as myself and people are giving me reflections on myself. And that feels empowering, because then I'm moving towards true growth, like growth in the self, growth of the self and reflection of the self. And, that feels like a massive shift.
Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is most misunderstood about men in the world today?
I think the biggest thing that's misunderstood about men is that we are told to be one thing, and anytime we step out of that, we are shamed, or emasculated, and shamed by men or emasculated by women. Or sometimes, even if you are expressing yourself in the right, there's lots of shame and there's lots of emasculation. And that forces men to like try and survive in these tough moments. They're like, okay, I can't be this person anymore. This person is completely attacked. The ego goes into defense mode, and then just, okay, well, I need to just dull down myself. And I think it's not just men, it's women as well. But I think the biggest thing that's misunderstood about men is it's probably what they misunderstand about themselves, is they have incredible emotional capacity, but most of them are desensitized to it in such a massive way. And I hear this over and over and over again with men in circle. And it's a lot of the times it's coming from their father, right? Their father showed up a certain way. Their father never told them they loved them. Their father never like showed a physical affection to them. So that's their main role model for a man, is this. So they're like, okay, well, that's who I need to be. I need to be less little boyish. I need to grow up. And then we have no rites of passage for men to help them step into that consciously. So they're left to flounder, and then they're like, well, this isn't working for me. I'm going to go be wild and be myself and find myself. But they're going through it while still being shamed and emasculated, shamed by the men in their life and emasculated by women in their life. And there's a lot of other men who are raised by single moms. And a lot of those single mothers hated men. And so there's a lot of boys out there that are just trying to please their mother, and their mother's not even in their lives anymore. Or, they're not as big in their lives, but every woman that they see is like, how do I make her approve of me? How do I make her approve of me? How do I change myself to make her approve of me? How do I fit myself into her so that I can feel this love for my mother again?
Thank you. I'm very passionate about finding understanding and healing between men and women.
Oh, me too.
Because it's so painful to watch this. It's like men have their experience and women have their experience, and they're both deeply linked in pain, and it's not a competition. And I think through the pain, the harm that happened from both sides, that there is this like, how do we get through this? And I have found in my own life, and then with the men that I have worked with in therapy, the more I understand how you guys work, like more understand you, from a biological standpoint. I've done a lot of studying around that and how you're designed to operate through like your testosterone and the way that your brain works, and that you are also deeply complex individuals. One of my favorite teachers, she studied the differences between men and women for 30 years. She says women, Allison Armstrong, women see men as misbehaving, hairy women. I just love, because when I heard that, I was like, oh, I think she's right. Because we have this thing as humans, what we do is we expect another person to be like us, whether it's a man or a woman. Like, oh, you're going to experience the world like me, but we don't. We all experience it so uniquely different. And so when I started studying her and some other different teachers along the way, I started communicating to my dad and my brothers differently. And I started communicating to my male clients differently, and actually using therapeutic interventions completely differently from how I've ever been taught in order to support the masculine. And I feel so much closer to my dad and brothers now, and they haven't had to do anything to change. I have simply shifted I've taken new information that I was never taught in what men might need. And one of these things was asking one question and then not saying anything, and then waiting for my dad or my brothers to actually answer me before saying something else or interrupting them. And it's been and my clients actually, it's been absolutely profound to me how much depth comes out when I just zip my lips and wait for what they have to share. And I think that's one of the, it's something that happens with women where our brains are going like a mile a minute, thinking about a million different things all the time. And when I have learned to ask men one question and then allow them to answer me, be like in your time, like Alison Armstrong says, ask one question and count to 30 and don't say anything. And when I first started doing this, it was really uncomfortable for me because I'm like, well, why do I have to do that? Feel it in my body, but I have more to say and I want to. And I first did this with my youngest brother, and I was staying at my mom and dad's in Victoria, and him and I are 5.5 years apart. And so we didn't hang out together as kids. And my other brother, who we're 2.5 years apart, we also worked together in restaurants as we got older. So Vince and I are not as close. We don't have our relationship's just not the same. And Vince came over one day and I asked him one question. I think I just said, how's it going? And I was at the top of the stairs and he came into the house and he sat down on the couch at the bottom of the stairs. And he goes, well, and he proceeded to talk for like the longest that I've ever heard my brother talk to me and let me into what was going on in his life. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling so satisfied and so like, oh, that felt really good to receive my brother in that way. And I had nothing, like there was no expectation of it. And ever since I've been doing this, I just see men differently. And I think this is how men's and women's work really can come together, because when women learn to see men differently, that to deal with the pain that we have in our systems around what has happened between men and women, and to then choose something different, to choose like, well, maybe this guy who's sitting in front of me right now isn't that man who hurt me. Like maybe something else is possible there. Mm-hmm. I've just seen it change so many things, like so many relationships. Really, really beautiful. And then when men can do their work and choose to see women in a new light and how we are different, like we're going to do things that you don't get and you're going to do things that we don't get. And we're not expecting the other to be the same. Mm-hmm. It delights me to no end at the thought of the possibility that can happen there.
Just like the small little things that you can change about your relational energy to bring that intention to it is such a massive shift. And I'll share it from the man's perspective. is I remember, you know, always with women in my life, women I was dating, you know, anyone I ran into, they'd tell me about a problem they were dealing with. I'd be like, yes, let me solve your problem. Immediately jump down. Yes, we can solve this by doing this, 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 and this. Because I think solving problems is like a masculine trait. Like we want to solve problems. Give us a problem to solve. And I remember getting so frustrated that they just want to talk about it. And I'd be like, why aren't you letting me solve the problem? Like, like I gave you the solution. You're not using it, you know? And I get so frustrated. And then like, I think it was in one of my men's groups, they just like said, well, does she want to be heard or does she want to be held? Or, you know, does she need a hug? And that three things became like a pillar for me. It's like, okay, I'd ask the partner first, do you want to be heard? Do you want to be held? Or do you want help? And then like, okay, I just want to be heard. Cool. Let me hold the space. And, you know, or I want to be hugged. Boom, I got you. Let me be in my masculine. I can hold you 100%. Or you want help? Yes. Hallelujah. I used H on purpose there. Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. If you can just ask that one question, it makes such a big difference. And it's understanding, you know, how to communicate in a way that is giving people autonomy to share their experiences and also allowing, you know, each person to step into how they express and how they can help the best. You know, I think one of my favorite things about men's work is that we create a container, a circle where we're there to help each other. And we get opportunities. Men come in with problems, things they're struggling with, and every other man is just alive. Like, let me help you with that. Let me help you with that. Yes, let me help. And that's powerful. It's empowering. It's like, yes, I can help. I have purpose. Look, I have individual purpose, but also I'm helping these people by sharing my experiences. And it connects you with them. And it's a game changer, you know, just like one small shift, like you taking that small step to like give extra space after you ask a question, you know, just like, okay, I guess I got to answer this question. Let me think on it a little bit. Okay. Yeah, cool. Got it. You know, and then proceed forward.
Yes. And I love that the heard, helped, or held. And because this is what I have learned to do in communicating with men, and is to actually be explicit about what I would like. Can you hear me? I need some help. Can you help me? And it changes everything. And I think when both men and women are doing that, coming from that angle, it's like, oh, this is what's going on here this way, and this is what's going on this way. Then there be this understanding, and because we're just speaking different languages.
And then also bringing that intentional energy to like a relationship, and doesn't necessarily need to be a romantic relationship, but we need to bring intentional energy to try and connect, especially in a post-COVID world where everyone just went online and thought that was okay with connecting. We need to be intentional, creating those opportunities for connection with men in our lives, with women in our lives. We need to be intentional. And I think one of the biggest disservices we can do to ourselves is going forward in the world that, sure, maybe I can be friends with men, you know, if you're a man, but like women, I'm looking for partner or nothing, you know? And, or just like categorizing, like this is someone that I want to have a physical sexual relationship with, pursue with that. This is someone I don't, no energy towards that. Like if you put the energy out and dig for gold with everyone, you're way more likely to get gold, you know? Whereas if you just look in the spot that, you know, you normally look, you're probably not going to get the same gold. You're going to get the same type of materials over and over and over again. And so giving yourself the space to like just love people and get to know them, you know, with no agenda in mind beyond connecting with a fellow human being. And then that creates opportunities for like authentic platonic intimacy connection. And I think that's something we're lacking in today's society, you know, like that's part of why the Hug Emporium came about, because it's positive physical contact. It's consensual space where one person is consented to another person to hug, and you connect your bodies together and create the opportunities for all those chemicals and that energy to swirl around. And I swear I'm not trying to bring any hippy dippy energy in here, but like, God damn, there is something there. Like I have felt myself give energy and bring someone to life And I felt myself be robbed of life when I wasn't aware. And I hugged someone who was struggling really hard. And I like stumbled and fell, one time after giving out a really powerful long hug because the people were in a very dark space. It lightened them up, but I wasn't protecting my own self and, holding space for my own emotional sovereignty while going through it. It's lessons that we learn, but, it's powerful, creating that space for platonic intimacy in more relationships creates a richer tapestry of existence, but we just have to make it culturally acceptable by being stewards and change makers that go forth and lead by taking those social risks. And then we create a culture, and it can start with your community. It can start with your group of friends. You can decide like, hey guys, like, want to like scooch over and cuddle or whatever, just like, let's just lie here. Let's lie here and listen to some music and maybe put our heads together, like it doesn't need to be romantic to be able to be like powerful and connective. And for your body will not know the difference. It will just know there's another human nearby. And that human, I feel their energy and it's enriching. And so I think giving yourself more connection, more potential for that is just one of those ways that you tap into your intrinsic joy.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that. Because I think I agree with you. And we've kind of talked about this in our conversations before. However, there is like, first, people are so disconnected from themselves. I don't think they actually, this was me for a long time. I didn't even know what I wanted or needed, or if that was even okay or not. Right. So it's like, I think there's a lot of people out there who are like, I don't even know. And then they're bypassing their own, what feels good or what feels right for them. And that can like cause more harm in the long run. And so and you did this so well in the last Common Joy, where you educated more about that in the last group, which was so good. But this is something that because I agree with you. It's like, yeah, touch is so lovely and it's so healing. And how can we trust ourselves? How do we cultivate the trust within ourselves to be able to say yes and no, and to know what feels correct, because we're also disconnected from ourselves. And so that's my own internal like contemplation around that, because I see it a lot. Like I've had that experience in myself, and then I see it a lot in the work that I do around like, just use people pleasing, for example. It's like, oh, I have to do this if this is being offered. And the same way how you said you gave someone a hug who was in this really dark place and you could feel that it wasn't correct. And I used to do stuff like that when I was in big workshops, and it was a very like touch focused place and hugs and stuff. But what I noticed was that sometimes as one of the facilitators, I didn't actually, like, the hug didn't feel correct, but it felt like that's kind of what you did. So I think it's a very complex topic.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And like platonic physical contact does not need to be hugging, right? But I think, as I said in Common Joy, it's like where we have the handshake is born from an archaic sort of trust exercise where we would check each other for weapons, and you'd grab the forearm and you'd look to see if this person's trying to stab you. And it was a way of getting to know if this person was trustworthy. But like, I think we've moved a little bit beyond that, where we're not worrying about people stabbing us all the time, at least in, where we're at right now in our community, at least.
Yeah.
And so giving a little bit more, even if you go and grab the forearms, that's a little bit more. You've now connected more skin to skin contact. You could go and do the old Christian side hug, side by side. There's so many more opportunities. You could go and do the bro hug. Yeah, what's up, bro? Slap on the back. You've got a little bit more connection. But if you can step into that, like, deeper hug, and you can create that space where, it's consensual on both parties and you both autonomously step into that and let it sit, then your nervous system and the chemicals inside your body, just like oxytocin, was off the charts. Your stress gets relieved, and you can kind of just like glide on that. It's like, it's almost like a high, you know what I mean? I don't know if you step into like a 1 minute hug. It's like, I ask any of your listeners, when was the last time you had a 1 minute hug? You know, most people get awkward after like 3 or 4, like 1 or 2 seconds, you know,
Totally.
and it's like, okay, now we're done. Hey, good to see you. Okay, bye. Like a 6-second hug feels long, you know, that's like 2 deep breaths, but like so powerful. And I challenge anyone listening right now to just try it, you know, like ask someone like, hey, can I give you like a longer hug? You know, I heard about it on this podcast. And if you do, please share it because I want to hear. Because go to the Hug Zone down in Lower Gibsons and share it there. You know, snap a photo even. Share it with me. I'd be grateful. But I really think that that's something that we need to give ourselves more permission to do. Just like expressing our shameless joy, just like expressing our shameless emotions, regardless of where they are. Just being authentic with those emotions. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a meeting and clients like, how you doing? I'm like, I know that's the default question, but like, I'm struggling. I'm struggling in this moment, but I know that it's going to be all right. You know, even a tear comes down, you know, or like I've been crying early in the day, and rather than trying to hide it, that's me. And what I'm doing is making it safe for that person as well. They can judge me. They can have their perceptions about me, but none of that is based in truth. It's just based off their perceptions. And so I can just be myself. And I encourage you to be yourself too, because I think it's the best thing we can do. Because when you're living your authentic self, people feel that energy and they want to tap into that, and you're going to create more opportunities for connection.
Yeah. Create that ripple.
Ripples.
The ripples. You've created a ripple in my life through our meetings, through really sharing, like seeing my own vision for my work. And really, you have a real ability to like see my vision, which I'm sure you do with the rest of your clients in Blue Lotus Creative, to see my vision and help me see further than what I could see. And so you've created this ripple that way. And then in Common Joy, and then just our conversations that we've had, that has really, I'm like, oh, this is a really good community to be in. I really love this community. And so I'm curious about what your next ripple is.
I'm in the process of organizing some adult summer camps.
Wow.
It's going to be multi-day sort of group experiences.
Yeah.
I'm also in the process of organizing a men's conference, a men's work conference, that's going to involve everything like leaders, men who are doing the work, men who are new to the work, all the way to the youth, in creating that space for us to connect a network of men, bringing leaders from men's group all across, you know, the Sunshine Coast, Vancouver Island, bringing them together to be able to start creating that network so that we can step into larger actions. So I firmly believe that joy is the fuel and service is the vehicle. And we have to fill our own cups so that we have the capacity to be able to do the hard work that's necessary to be able to move this world back towards one worth living for all of us, not just for some of us. And I think that's what needs to happen. We need to step into service. And that's what I do work with Blue Lotus Creative. That's why I do work with Common Joy. That's why I do work with men. It's me stepping into service. What I recommend to all my clients is stepping into service as well. Regardless of business, it's the best marketing you can do. You know, it's one thing to like give your money to a charitable organization. It's another to like go and help an initiative that's going to benefit your community, that's going to create positive ripples in your community, that's going to create opportunities for change in people's lives, in their individual lives, which ripples out again. So like stepping into service beyond financial recompense, because finances is not what we need right now. We don't need more money. I know it feels like we need more money, and there's scarcity and war and all these different things. And we could find reasons to fear if you want. But if you look at it and you decide to take 30 days to step into hope and optimism and see where you're at the end of those 30 days, and do another experiment and step into fear and anger and scarcity and see where you're at the end of those 30 days. And I guarantee you're going to be in a better space mentally after the 30 days of hope and optimism. And everyone around you is also going to be in a better space. you're going to create a bastion to be able to create stability for other people who are struggling. And that's going to ripple out beyond you, because every single person that steps into it can then become a bastion themselves.
Thank you. It's very beautiful, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Juliana.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being first guest on the podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
Where can people find you?
Dancing in the streets, giving out hugs. No, find me at Love for All Humans on Instagram, or Blue Lotus Creative on Instagram, or my personal website and blog where all my different projects are listed. There's probably at least a couple blogs every week. GabrielMcCay.com. That's MCCAY. Everyone always gets that wrong. And yeah, come check out Common Joy. If you're a man looking for some coaching, reach out, or you want to be a part of a men's group. Probably one of the best things I've ever done for my life, to be able to have that circle and get reflection. So yeah, I encourage anyone listening who feels inspired, if you feel the call, act on it. Don't just like bury it behind all the other to-dos, because there's probably a reason that you're feeling that right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll put all of Gabriel's links in the show notes so you can find them.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I just we spoke so much about like the hope, and there is a quote from A Course in Miracles, and it says, there is no order in the difficulty of miracles. So if you're ever like wondering, oh, what does it matter what I do, or this is so big, like there is no order in the difficulty of miracles, because miracles are our birthright. This is a miraculous place, and miracles are natural. So, and that's what you're speaking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't need to be spiritual. You just need to step into filling your cup and making sure you fill it for others as well. And then it's a net benefit for the world, because you being happier is better for everyone around you. And if you make other people happy at the same time, you're creating the opportunity for that to ripple out in a larger way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and wishing you the most beautiful day.